might be the reflection of a good guy persona, but typically they're the antithesis of everything you might believe that may be furthest from you morally, intuitively, and socially. Yet there's something about them that draws you to them. Why do we love our dark sides? Writing, exploring, and finding ways to reinvent them. Why is it so much fun to say hello to the bad guy? Let's discuss. The Concealed Canon will be along with indie books you might enjoy if you're a fan of Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Gerber. Then in the epilogue, we give our panelists some choices to make. So grab a beverage, stretch those fingers, and get ready to chat along with us as we explore the bad guys in This Week in Indies with your host, Joe Compton. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to This Week in Indies. Yes, I am your host, Joe Compton, and it's so nice to have you here. Thank you for joining us. We're gonna have a little fun today. We're gonna be exploring the bad guys and the darker side of what we write and how we write it, and kind of coming up with the yin to our yang, so to speak. And to do that, I have a wonderful, wonderful group of people here to join me to do that today. And I'm really excited to have them all here, as I am Anita, who's in the chat. Hello, Anita. And A.L. Mengel's here. Hello. Tiffany breaking the fourth wall. Hello, Tiffany. And so, Tiffany, why don't you break the first wall for us and tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then we will go down the list and go down the row and say hello to everybody.
Hello. Hi. I am Tiffany Vega. I'm an author of, I believe it's 6 books now, and I'm a multi-genre author. So if you like anything from fantasy to psychological thriller, I am your person. You can find all my books on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. And since we are talking about villains, if you're looking for a really, really great villain, let me recommend The Elements, Destiny and Desire, because it has a really fantastic villain in it.
It does. It really does. All right, Mickey.
Hi, I'm Mickey DeBro. I've got 3 books out. I got a 4th one coming out in January. 2 of them are dystopian thrillers.
Hey, Mickey, you're really faint now.
Really? Oh my gosh.
I'll come back to you in just a second. Tim, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Good morning from Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. My name is Tim Bratton, and I'm a retired police officer. I retired about 7 years ago after about 28 years in criminal justice. And I wrote my first book about 6 months ago, and it's kind of a memoir. And so I'm the bad guy in the book. And so I'm excited to be talking about my own bad guy persona and how I can see the beauty. And now I travel around the country as a motivational, inspirational speaker. And the book kind of marries up really well with my presentation.
Nice. Awesome. Hang on just a second. Let me see if I can maneuver this a little bit. All right. Mickey dropped out for a second. I can't put Rox and Charles on the screen together without putting everybody on the screen together. So I apologize, guys. You're just going to have to manipulate that a little section that you have there in the corner for right now. But tell everybody, I don't know if you guys want to introduce yourself separately or together. It's up to you guys. So you guys go with it, because I know you're a team and we want to acknowledge that aspect of it. But please, however you guys want to do it.
Thank you, Joe. So we prefer being introduced as individuals. It just works better that way, you know.
Okay, cool. Well, then I'll start with you, Ross.
Welcome everybody to Austin, Texas, where it is going to hit the 90s today. We're waiting for the hurricane fallout that's supposed to hit here later and drop a little bit of moisture, which would be nice. But I am co-author of the Enigma series, which is the overarching title for what we have written. We have, over 30 books published right now. We do write in multiple genres, from techno thrillers, which was our introductory, and then we have moved into some other genres. So, Charles, how about you fill in the gaps?
that was actually pretty good. Maybe I need to get some of our books and for myself to be able to read. But yeah, we do short stories. We've done cozy mysteries. We've dabbling a little bit in science fiction here and there. So exploration, pushing the envelope for our writing and creativity. That's kind of who we are. So sometimes we get rather festive with some of the titles that we put out.
Nice. All right, and Mickey's back. All right, Mickey.
Is this any better?
No, you're still really quiet.
I don't know I don't know how to adjust it. I've tried finding the settings and I've got it all the way up. I don't know how to change it. Not sure what I'm missing.
What are you using for the microphone?
Just the computer. I'm on a Mac.
It's I don't know. It's tough to. Macs are a little bit trickier in terms of the sound aspect of things. Well, just keep going, keep trying. We'll get you in here. Mickey's a great author, everybody. People who don't know, he writes great stuff. So I do know that. So, so I'll kind of pseudo introduce Mickey for everybody, and then when he figures it out, we'll try to wrestle you in there and get you going. All right. He's using his computer, Al. He's got a Mac. So maybe our savvy chat will help you out here. In the meantime, let's explore a little bit of the darkness, a little bit of the bad guy. I'm curious to start this conversation off a little bit about how we figure out. I mean, we want there to be nuances. We want there to be interesting aspects to our bad guy personas, right? And so when we tap into that, how we look at it in terms of starting out, right? So because the nuances and the enhancements and all those things and kind of as they go, or do you develop the character first to kind of get him into the flow of where you want him to go or where you want them to go? Sorry, I didn't mean to genderize it. Do you just have a system, an idea of how you're going to write a bad guy to begin with? Is it just make them as evil as possible and try to pare it down? Is it try to find the nuance, try to find the similarities? Where do you start with your bad guys?
Well, you want me to take a shot at it, Joe?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Rox and I were talking and communicating with a screenplay writer not too long ago, and we got into the same kind of discussion. How do you build the characters? The good guys, the bad guys, the protagonist, antagonist. And he maintained, him and his partner actually, they both maintained that there was no fundamental difference between the protagonist and the antagonist. They were the same fundamentally. And I thought, oh, come on, I know we started the debate. He goes, no, wait, work with me here. The protagonist, he's been hurt. She's been hurt. There was a defining moment that basically scarred them emotionally, psychologically, whatever, and they fell into this issue of internalizing all of their thoughts and feelings, and that's where that discussion stopped. And then he said, now the antagonist, he's the opposite. She's the opposite. She can't wait to inflict her anger on somebody else. His anger, and it goes anywhere from let me cut you off in the traffic to world domination. I mean, they externalize all of their feelings, and that was the subtle difference. And so that gave us some really good discussions. Rox, you want to weigh in on that conversation? You're muted, Rox.
You're muted, Rox.
It's a Mike day. I think the only other thing I want to add on to that, Charles, is that, they have no filtering typically. So the filters are gone because of all of the elements that you messaged, which is why in many stories you can have a character that is just as bad can be, and yet can be turned to the bright side, as it were. I don't know. Tiffany, what do you think?
I love writing villains just because there's a degree of villainish. You can be total, don't care about anybody, anything, anywhere. And then my favorite villains are the ones that believe they're doing the right things, but are doing it for selfish reasons. And so it's fun to know their motivation, get into their head, and have them help you write the story out. So you can have like a complete psycho killer, like in my first book, who pretty much has no rhyme or reason other than jealousy, and then just have somebody who is the hero of their own story. And so it's I think it has a lot to do with knowing the motivation, getting into their character, just because you're getting into your hero's character.
For you, Tim, being the bad guy in your story, how is that? Was that like a self-reflection kind of idea?
Totally. So what you've all described was like my life. I started out I want to make a difference in the world. I'm going to go out there, and I wanted to be a cop since I was in kindergarten. And then I was a police officer, and then I quickly turned into that us versus them mindset, where it was, the speed limit's 30, and knucklehead, it's not 35, and it was everybody, it was my night shift partners and myself against the world. And that's not me. But so the protagonist starting out in law enforcement became the antagonist. And then it was through a series of self-reflections and people that I met in my life that made me recognize that, hey man, you're going down this path. You're going to burn out quickly and be somebody that's miserable to be around. And so that was my story in my book. It's real. It was, and we all can fall into that, can't we? In real life, we can fall into that us versus them mindset, and where it's, Republicans and Democrats, or whether it's parents versus kids, and we just fall into that. And I was hooked into it deep. And so yeah, I was the jerk knuckle dragging cop for a few years, and but thankfully I started recognizing and remembering that there's a lot of beauty out there. And so it was that self-reflection and the writing of it. I'm a brand new author. I when I started writing 7 years ago, it read like a police report. It was ridiculous, and it was horrible reading. And but that whole writing process, and I'm sure you would all agree how cathartic it really is. And when we can get into those corners in our mind and tease out these characters, it's amazing, fun process.
All right, Mickey, I just sent you a link to try out, so maybe that'll help. You want to see if you can speak? We'll see where you're at.
Something different.
Yeah, no, it's still very quiet. It's even worse now. Maybe try going out and coming back in, and we'll.
But I'll tell you, Joe, I asked him to go ahead and write his response just.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw.
So he says, I write bad guys to reflect a political view I disagree with, which is very interesting. So we have an argument kind of situation. But over the course of his writing, he gets everybody to just love those characters. That's got to be quite a talent. It makes me want to read what he writes.
It's very interesting. The chat is chiming in a lot here as well. And they say, my most recognizable villain in my work may be the hooded man from the Blood Decanter. It's based on the idea of a false prophet. The character was created through other characters' demons, and then such as shortcomings, doubt, greed, temptation. generated the villain in the story. I think that the us versus them is definitely a common cop attitude. My brother is a cop. And Vanessa says my villains are very gray. They're always doing what I think is best, but their methods are generally ruthless and outside of the acceptable ways to change. So they come across as, oh, maybe they're not so bad because they are not bad in other aspects of their lives, but the focus on their outcome they may want is what makes them a bad guy. Okay, Mickey's back. Let's see.
I'm sure it's no better.
No, yeah, it's still very quiet. Yeah, I don't know, man. Try that link I sent you and see what happened.
Yeah.
You had your headphones on before. That was a little better. I could hear you a little bit more. You want to try that again?
Sure.
And then A. Omegle says, in other books I've written, the situation and environment has become the villain. That's an interesting aspect. We'll talk about that in a little bit. A lot of my villains are narcissists. Yeah. So, other than Tim, who became the bad guy in his story, kind of creating that persona and that nuance. And I don't know, maybe it was cathartic and fun for you, Tim. I don't know. But the idea of tapping into that energy to kind of get that focus, right? And to get that mentality of whether it's the villain being right or, the opposite of what you believe or how you believe it. Being in that energy and creating that character, what was it about that? Did you find a nice flow? Did you enjoy that process? Is there something about it that you didn't experience before as a writer? Tiffany, you want to start us?
I will. I think that with each of my characters, no matter if it's a villain or a hero, a piece of me is in it. And when I was writing certain villains in my stories, I put a little bit more of me in it than other ones. And I like taking on the mindset as a villain, like what is going to accomplish that goal, and how is that going to reflect them? And I'll just use my character in elements. Like, how is that going to reflect the goal that she wants to accomplish? Because deep down, she doesn't think she's doing anything wrong, and that she's doing right by the world by doing what she's doing. And for people who don't know what it is, it has like angels, demons, and stuff. So she is thinking that she's saving the world from itself. And how can I portray that in a way that makes it look like she doesn't know she's doing the absolute worst thing ever? And so getting into that mindset is really fun. How to play that, like the way that she talks, the way that her actions are. It's a different way of thinking because you don't think about the opposite action or the reaction to your action.
Interesting. Rox, you want to chime in on that?
Thanks, Joe. We actually have bad boys and villains throughout the series that we have either reconstituted or given them their just desserts. But one of our favorites were two bad boys that came up in the Enigma Rising, and they were bad. And they were bad because of circumstances of their life and reactions from other individuals throughout their life. And it took a pivotal moment for them to realize that there could be something else in their future. And digging down, maybe they could find a way to change. And that was very instrumental. And creating that as a storyline for us was harder than we thought it was going to be. Because people just don't switch like a light switch. That's not believable. And so it took some significant ways to deal with that.
Yeah, a lot of the defining moments to be able to make that transition. It's that's inward inspection of the why. How did I get here? I mean, I'm navigating, across the multiple countries, trying to get drug lords and their money out. And who said this was a good idea? I mean, I've got people that now look to me and I think I've made a mistake. And it's that catharsis, that revelation of like, you can change. Is it really easy to do? No, it's no fun to be able to do that if you're trying to write, and because the reader's like, well, that kind of sucks. I mean, I want to see some stress. I want to see them the brother take a bullet for somebody that he barely knew. And those are the things that where they start to reevaluate, enjoy more of the. Like Tim would say, the light side instead of the dark side, and that's that. Like Rock said, that's hard to do, and we struggle trying to get it just exactly right because it can't look too easy, it can't be too hard because that's like, but it tells you about the character, and that's and that book too that we did. A lot of the reviewers spotted that the character development, and that was very gratifying to have them comment on that.
Nice. How about for you, Tim?
Yeah, again, this is all tying in beautifully. It's just that the villain has to kind of resonate with the reader too, where sometimes when we're reading about the bad guy, there has to be some characteristics of that person that we identify in ourselves, like, and when we can relate to that person and then almost root for them sometimes. I mean, yeah, you want them to see to get their just dessert, just like whatever, like, hey, you got to get what's coming to you if it's a really bad person. But some of those characters that we read about that are the bad guy, so to speak, then if we can pull for them a little bit too and understand that, yeah, it's part of their circumstances, and then we become emotionally attached to that, and where it feels kind of contradictory to be rooting for them a little bit, but I think that's what makes an interesting bad guy, is somebody that is relatable, that's just not from another planet, that's just this bad individual through and through. There's something that's causing that person to be bad, and maybe there's still a little bit of good left in them.
Awesome. I want to play off of that in a minute, but I want to check in on Mickey. Mickey, you want to give us a little test?
Yeah, sure. I'm sure I'm still can't hear me at this point.
Yeah, just you're a little better though.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I've turned it up as high as I can get, and it manually. And it's not. I can't go any higher.
Yeah. Well, I can translate. Yeah, because I can hear you. I understand. The audience might not be able to very well, but just bear with us. I can repeat what Mickey says if you guys all can't hear it, and everyone has to be very quiet. Vanessa says so. Yeah. So Mickey, why don't you try and I just muted everybody else, so.
I'll just talk about bad guys in general. I love writing bad guys, especially when they pontificate, because they believe they're the hero of their story, and they're delusional. But the problem I always run into is I start out like writing someone I really hate, and I'm like, I'm getting revenge on this guy because I hate him. But as I develop the character, I start to love him and feel bad about all the terrible things I'm going to do to them, but before the story's over.
That's interesting. If you didn't hear, Mickey has empathy, develops empathy for his bad guy after a while because he can't. He feels bad about what he's doing to all of them. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry for Mickey to do that. I'm trying to involve the audience so that they can hear. If you all can hear Mickey, just let us know that you can at least understand and hear him. So I don't feel like a heel repeating what he says, because that's just rude. But if you don't hear something and you want to hear it from Mickey, Vanessa says, I just turn up my volume high when Mickey is talking. Thank you, Vanessa. I appreciate that. But we'll figure it out. We'll get through it. because this, for people who don't know, Mickey's actually the one who suggested this topic this week, so I'm really excited to hear what he has to say about it. All right, so let's move into the aspect that Tim was touching on a little bit, and Mickey, you touched on it a little bit as well, and the curiosity of the teeter-totter with the bad guy and the good guy, right? We want to create that emphasis of maybe you'll root for the bad guy a little bit, it kind of, for me, that's when I create a bad guy. That's what warms my heart, is when people say, I didn't know who to root for halfway through the book, or halfway through the movie. You made me think about who really was the bad guy. And I do that on purpose. That is purposeful for me. And I enjoy that little aspect of that little trickery and that little trick of trade aspect of it. But I also know who the bad guy and the good guy are in my mind, right? And so I teeter-totter between them. So is it a matter of bringing up the good guy or bringing down a little bit of what you do with the bad guy, or creating something that is so bad that nobody can deny it? How do you manage the balance of the teeter-totter so that you can get that good guy, bad guy equilibrium? Tim, why don't we start with you?
Well, it's a little, again, it was my story, is about me. So it was just throwing it out there. And, I'm going to be honest. And that was the toughest part about writing the book, was being so honest about all the mistakes that I made. And that was the scariest part. But my hope was that by me throwing out there that, the mistakes that I made, that somebody out there reading it would internalize that again. Like, okay, they're reading about this guy that, wow, he did some okay things in life, and he made some mistakes. And if they internalize that, that was my goal, was to have them reflect on their own life and say, my life wasn't exactly like that, but I can learn from that. And then, I'm not hoping that people root for me per se, but I'm hoping that by me being vulnerable and honest and open, that they can take that and plug it into their life. And that's when I'm speaking about that too. That's my goal, is, again, it's not about me. It's about them sitting there and reflecting on what I'm saying or what we're reading, and hopefully that's going to make them move in some positive direction in their own life.
It's interesting. You're trying to, it sounds like you're almost trying to have them gain perspective a little bit of and kind of internalize what you're saying and showing, right? That's pretty cool. I like that idea. That's a unique way to kind of polarize a bad guy, good guy, teeter-totter, to be, to use the term I just used. Mickey, why don't you try, and everybody real quiet, is Mickey's talking, everybody. Go for it.
I see that the good guy is only as good as the bad guy. So the bad guy has to be worth hating and rooting against for the good guy to shine through. I do have the bad guy have an epiphany of some sort towards the end, where he starts to go, well, maybe I'm wrong. But I think it's better to have it to where they never come to that self-realization, because that's what they're missing, is enough introspection to realize that, maybe I'm wrong. They have this absolute belief, and absolute belief is always a mistake. We should always be questioning as people. So it's those people who don't question, who just go, oh, I've got all the answers, who are always ultimately wrong, because they're not evolving, they're not growing.
Right. Charles, you mentioned that you were very happy with the way that people perceived the character development. So was there also a moment when your audience or your readership kind of noticed the change too? Did you guys purposely go for that, or was there a little bit more ambiguity to kind of keep that character development intact?
Well, in book 10, we've got a cyber freebooter, and he's only interested in how much money he can put in his pocket. And him and his sidekick, they have some rather unusual. We got to pair the two of them up and have their characters kind of help reflect to the audience, to the reading audience, what was going on. He's not a very nice character. He's driven. If he's got ice water in his veins, I mean, and yet there's a scene where the defining moment where his and he never calls him his best friend until after his best friend has been killed. And it's a very powerful scene where all of a sudden it's like I missed life. And the one reviewer just it's always stuck in my mind ever since that. He goes, I didn't want to like Matthias. I simply he's detestable, but I couldn't help myself. I felt sorry for him, and that was probably the best compliment for character development that I've ever seen, and it was remarkable.
Nice. Rox, you want to add to that?
I think I really am enjoying the conversation overall because we have empathy, redeemability. We have, oh no, you're going to go to the netherworld and fry, all coming from different kinds of stories. And I think that's very important from a character perspective. Some bad people are just evil through and through. I mean, it's just evil to the bone. It's never going to change. And yet others may be a perception from the audience, and still others may be that there is some glimmer of redeemability. And I think that's what makes this collection of authors so interesting, is how they approach the different gradients, I think, of evil or bad or never redeemable. I don't know. I like it. I think that the feedback from any reviewer is going to be the test. Whether we actually hit the mark or not. Whether it's somebody who's read a bunch of our books and said, I never liked this character. You kept bringing this character back. They're just nasty, nasty, nasty. And then all of a sudden something happened and, okay, maybe I'm more like them than I think,
Yeah, it is interesting, the juxtaposition of everybody here. But I think that is the nuances of creating villains, right? Because the bad guy has so many layers to it. Sometimes the good guy can be very two-dimensional, and because they have a moral obligation, or they have a mission or a thought. I liked what Vanessa said earlier about making her characters gray, and I think that's more of where a lot of modern day writing is going, is that there's a grayness to both sides, and so it's kind of creating that kind of interesting mask. But yeah, I think that the villain aspect of it is just, there's just so much to play with. It's nice little putty and clay to mold, right? So I love that aspect of it. Tiffany, how about for you? How do you teeter-totter?
I think it depends on the villain. Because my books, their villains, there's so many different style of villains. Like my very first book that I wrote, my debut novel, a psychological thriller, you don't know who the villain is. You just know that somebody's out there doing something bad. You don't know the villain is. And so from that point of view, they're strictly just villainous. They're crazy psycho killer that you don't know. And the good thing about that is, like this year, I'm doing a updated version because it needed to be re-edited, but I'm adding the POV as bonus scenes for the new thing to show the killer's point of view. So that's been fun writing, because then I get to play a complete psycho person that has no morals whatsoever, and that's fun. And then in the Element series, I'm writing a villain that totally thinks that she's in the just. And then in my fantasy romance series, the villain isn't who you really think it is. So I get to write a character that you think is the villain, and they do a bad thing, but turns out they're not the villain. So it's been fun. And then the villain being not, I wouldn't say the good guys, but being somebody that you think is good, it turns out to not be so good at the end. So
Andy says, my good guys also make poor choices and do bad things that they learn from. And that is also a characteristic of teeter-tottering to develop a villain versus a good guy, right? The choices that they make, how they react to those choices, right? So, a good guy will often take those and feel guilty or have, remorse or think about it and learn from it, where the bad guy just does it sometimes and doesn't even think about it afterwards, right? There's whatever repercussions are going to come, oh, well, let's just go for it, right? And I think there's a certain freedom for writers in that aspect too. But is there something to be said for the discipline of keeping your good guys and bad guys on each side? Do you feel like that there's a muscle you use as a writer that is kind of interesting for you, so that you can keep the sides, the way they are, or gray them even, if that's the case? Do you feel like that's an interesting exercise for yourselves? Mickey, do you want to start? It seems like you were jumping in here.
I think I don't have a trouble keeping them separate. I just always see the bad guy is just one of the obstacles that the good guy has to face, and that's just, and then usually the bad guy is just one of the many things that the good guy is struggling against. He's just another obstacle for the good guy.
Nice. Whoever wants to jump in, I'm happy to. Go ahead, Tim.
So I got a question for you. If there's no bad guy, is there really a good guy then? I mean, if there's, it sounds like our good guy. I mean, if we can teeter totter within our own good guy.
Yeah,
persona,
it could be. Yeah, I mean, it could easily be. I mean, there's a lot of famous writing out there that does that, where where you think you're talking to the good guy and it's really the bad guy, or vice versa, right? So, or whatever the bad guy thinks he's the good guy telling the story. I mean, going from a bad guy POV, sometimes you're not so sure that you're not talking to the good guy. It's kind of interesting. I like that. How about for you guys, Charles, Rox?
Well, from our perspective, we do a lot of cat and mouse in the cyber world, and you're in cybersecurity, techno thrillers, and the standard thrillers that we like to do. The good guy has to get into the mindset of the bad guy. You can't defeat them always being the good guy, because in our world, the bad guys are always ahead, and that's just the way it is. So the good guys are always playing catch up. And how do you do that? You've got to be able to say, all right, what was he thinking? Let me peel that back, and you see them sponging up those evil thoughts, and then all of a sudden, like, wait a minute. He's about to turn to the dark side. Ooh, wait! Oh no! Now he's able to control and make the sensible choices that our society depends upon, as opposed to the bad guys, like Tiffany said, yahoo, let's go whack somebody, and then it's time for coffee. So those are the dichotomy. But to Tim's point, you've got to have both of them. The mindset of, okay, I've got to compete against them. I've got to win, and those are the things that make the dynamics between the good and the bad interesting and readable.
Nice.
And I think to add to that, there's a very fine line just in dealing with people. Period. I mean, Tim, your example is absolutely perfect. I did something that was, I'm going to help people. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then all of a sudden, or not all of a sudden, over time, something occurred where all of it made you think about it in a negative way rather than in a helpful way. And so I think that's what makes characters more relatable to readers is because more often it's being seduced by greed or power or, the influences of someone else that makes people change their base thought process, their base reaction to situations. And so I think that has an awful lot to do with it as well. And so that makes it relatable. And boy, oh boy, readers love relatable characters, bad or good. I think they like the bad ones a little better, though. I really do.
Well, as a fan of Tiffany's book, The Elements, which I really loved, it was one of my favorite books. I can relate to her bad guy very, very well in that aspect because of the idea of that it doesn't blur the lines. You really know who the good guys and bad guys are, but they struggle with their bad guys and good guys intentions, right, Tiffany? And that's kind of the juxtaposition you put them in, right? So is that how you look at it too, kind of morally graying those areas so that you can kind of give that persona?
I look at my I have a gray line, and if you cross it and step back over, you're being a bad guy, and you have to have that redeeming moment to get back over onto the other side. And in all intents and purposes, one of my characters in The Element, because it's multi-point of view, she's technically what you could call an anti-hero, because her job is taking people's souls. But she has a morally white, disposition. So she would be like an anti-hero because she's not necessarily does all the right things. When she does something bad, it does affect her, and she's like, torn up about it. But she doesn't always do what you consider a hero does. And my villain, she is doing bad things, but with the thought that she's doing it right. So, and there's all the characters have a point in their story where they're stepping over and crossing that line for their own personal reasons. Yeah. It's just who stays over on this line is the villain, Yeah. So they teeter back and forth, and I think it's just part of making your story relatable, because we all mess up and we all make bad decisions. It's just how we recover from those decisions we make.
Nice. And that's kind of what the chat's going along with too. They say that I wrote about good versus evil and War Angel, and angels versus demons can quite be structured or not. Sometimes the good becomes the evil and vice versa. Fallen angels are remorseful demons. Yeah, it's a mystery. And then Vanessa says, my good guys make bad decisions all the freaking time. My series bad guy actually helped my protag escape the first book's bad guy, which made her and hopefully the reader unsure. And then she says, unsure of the series bad guy's intentions. Yeah. Well, we lost Rox for just a second. We'll be. Actually, we lost Tiffany. Sorry. There's Tiffany. Sorry. That he just melted her computer, but it's all good. She's back. All right, everybody. Well, we're gonna take a little break. We're gonna do the Indie Connection here. And if you're a fan of Once Upon, I even forgot the name of this book, but anyway, it's Stephanie Gerber, and it's a wonderful book and wonderful Indie Connection. And CL Cannon always brings us some great indies to take a look at. So take a look at that, and then we'll be right back. I have an interesting spin on this question for the panel here when we come back, and we'll wrap up.
Hey guys, CL Cannon here from Fiction Atlas Press, bringing you another Indie Connection. Today I'd like to tell you about some indie books that you might enjoy if you're a fan of Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Gerber. I absolutely love this book, and I'm excited to show you some indies that have some similar stories to this one. The first book I have for you is called The Blessing Giver by Cindy Gunderson. Bound by fate, torn by duty. Raelle, a gifted blessing giver, is destined to serve the goddess, but when an intriguing outsider interrupts her sacred ritual, her world is turned upside down. Paladin's mixed blood is a death sentence under the goddess's laws. Yet Raelle finds herself inexplicably drawn to him, haunted by visions of their intertwined future. Questioning her path could lead to exile, while ignoring her vision risks offending the goddess. Can Raelle reconcile love and duty, or will a destiny written in the stars lead to a bitter end? Will she find a way to unravel the prophecy that threatens to undo magic itself? The second book I have for you is called Flame and Crystal Thorns by K.L. Moody. She'd vowed she'd never return to Fairy, but vows were made to be broken. As a human girl, Chloe is perfectly happy being back in the mortal realm where she belongs. She's even become the town apothecary. When a fae from her past shows up begging her to return to Fairy, she utterly refuses. But then she finds out an angry group of mortals are using iron to hold an entire castle full of fae hostage. And of course, the hostages include Chloe's older sister and her sister's beloved. Reluctantly, Chloe packs a bag for what is supposed to be a short trip to Fairy. But the mortals are more powerful than she expected. To fuel them, they have weapons, flames, and revenge. They won't stop until they control every court in Fairy. With the help of a new and mysterious magic and a devastatingly handsome fae companion, Chloe has to save Fairy before her sister and the other fae are killed. The third book I have for you is called A Forest of Stolen Memories by Callie Thomas. I didn't care that he was a prince. They would not force me to marry a stranger. A royal wedding turns to disaster when a sinister curse goes awry. A victim of the sorcerer's prophecy, Rosalind's memories are instantly erased, leaving her panicked at the altar. Unwilling to marry a stranger, she flees to the place her prince fears most, the enchanted Mistbrook Forest. Lost and afraid, she seeks help from a dark, mysterious traveler who may be the key to recovering her stolen memories. After years of solitude, Cedric is lost in the horrors of his past. He never expected to find himself face to face with the future princess of Cadell. The long-standing feud between their kingdoms doesn't douse the fiery connection he feels to her. So when she requests safe passage through the forest, he can't ignore her plea, even though it puts both their lives at risk. Rose is determined to regain her memories, but with Cedric as her reluctant guide, she experiences the magic of the forest through new eyes. Does true love really exist? She is beginning to think it might, with Cedric. But when her past collides with her present, sparks explode, and the very memories she's been seeking are the ones she most wishes she could forget. Can she break the curse without breaking her heart? And the last book I have for you is called The Shade Between Shadows by E.C. Hibbs. I didn't think myself truly silent. I possessed a voice as sure as any other. It was simply not the same as any other I had met. The year is 1838. Queen Victoria has ascended the throne, and within the United Kingdom lies Nightland, a sprawling forest filled with darkness and danger. Beatrice has always been different. She has not spoken since childhood, communicates through drawings, and hates to be touched. And she is a Grey, half English and half Nightlander. When she is forced into servitude across the border, she hatches a plan to escape with siblings Anselm and Gretchen. But gaining her freedom will be no simple task, for first she must unravel the secrets of her master, Prince Edward, a man rumored to have murdered his wife, and who shares Beatrice's ability to see people's souls. Okay, that's all for me this week. I'll see you next week on the Indie Connection. Bye!
As always, some great books from CL Cannon, some great covers, some great blurbs. Everybody go check those out. It's going to be an awesome collection. I know everybody's TBR list is getting bigger and bigger every week, but hey, that's what we do here. So we're very happy for that. And thanks to Courtney for doing all that for us. And I wanted to bring back the chat and a little bit and talk a little bit about the villains that we don't see. The idea of our environment, our not being a human villain or bad guy, making something other than a person be directly a bad guy. What differences do you think? I'm not sure if everybody's written something to that effect or utilized that aspect of it, but in thinking about it, what would you say is a little different about that as opposed to the human villain? What would you, how would you approach that aspect for yourselves?
Well, I know when I was doing fantasy characters, the idea for me was that they didn't follow our morality. it wasn't their world. Why would they even believe in that? That, monogamy or how you treated other people, also sexuality, all those kinds of things. It's like, why would they go by those rules? So also their morals were different. They had, and it was up to the humans to figure out how to fit into their world, other than the other way around.
I love that. So, Charles, Roxy, you guys write anything that, I mean, obviously the computer viruses could be villains.
Yeah.
Well,
So when we put together the Enigma series, one of the things we did early on was state that technology is today's weapon of choice. And I think that's evident in newspapers for the last, 15 plus years. And things from a computer, viruses or hackers or opportunity that arises because of some of these things, I think that becomes a huge factor. Trying to explain them as elements and characters is something that we kind of do a tap dance around, because some of it's lessons to people to be careful for security, and yet people don't like lessons in stories unless they can tease them out themselves. They don't want to be told. I don't know, Charles, your thoughts?
yeah. Well, when we did the Enigma Air series, the new series we started. Our big antagonist is an ecological gangster. He has no compassion for the planet that we live on. It basically is like, hey, I've got this contract. I'm taking out the trash, and what do you care what I do with it? And so it was an interesting exercise on how to be able to take something, as you'd indicated. It doesn't have feelings or sensitivities, or you can't talk to it, but it permeates our environment, and so we're part of it. And so why does this person have this animosity to something that nurtures all of life? And so that's the underlying motif in that particular book.
That's pretty awesome. I kind of imagine, Tim, the beat has some of the beats you walked and some of the streets you've walked probably have some character to them as well.
Oh, absolutely. And this is a fascinating conversation. I haven't written about that per se, but one thing that I do write about and speak a lot about is how do we navigate the challenging parts of life while still looking for the beauty. And so I think that whole toxic negative thought can be looked as the villain, that how do we acknowledge that and recognize it, but still remember that there's so much beauty out there too. And so I think just that whole thought process, and we can get really wrapped up into that whole, again, us versus them, and that there's this boogeyman out there or something, and we're horrible at recognizing that we initially judge whatever it is, and we're thinking we know everything about it, and we really know nothing. So it's a fascinating topic.
How about for you, Tiffany?
I don't think I've really written anything outside of an actual person, I guess you would say, is the villain.
Well, you got demons, and
Yeah, well, that's why, like, an actual person, like it's a thing.
Yeah.
I think about what you were saying, more like, Mother Nature. Like, say you got lost in a snowstorm, and the villain would be the snow. Or if somebody is writing, like, a book about themselves, pride, greed, lust would be, the villain in those stories. Something that's not, tangible, that you can look at, that can be more of a villain than an actual, like, being.
Yeah, there's an independent film out there for anybody interested called Open Water that tests your patience tremendously, because the villain is the sea or the ocean, and it's just people trying to survive before trying to be rescued. They get stranded in the middle of the ocean, like literally in the middle of the ocean, where there's nothing and nobody, and it's them treading water for about 2 hours. So It'll test your patience as a viewer, but it will terrify the hell out of you if you let the water consume you. And
the ocean scares me, so that would terrify me.
Yeah, for people who don't like water, that certainly would be very, very fearful. And that kind of brings me to the thing I want to wrap up with. For villainous attributes and things of that nature, part of the advantage a villain might have is the fearlessness that it carries with it, or the disregard for the fear, or maybe even more so playing into deeper fear, and holding on to that and using that advantage. So in terms of writing that, have you challenged yourselves in terms of, taking on fears that you might have? And is that become a personal thing for you in terms of your writing? Or is it, certain things are going to push certain buttons, so you utilize that aspect to help your villain, shape itself a little bit?
I'll go.
So I'll go. I have a scene in The Elements where there is the bad guy kidnaps one of the good guys and puts them in this room that is like a vast void of darkness, and things are looking at him, like eyeballs are looking at him, and it's like a page out of a nightmare for me. Like it was like, it still makes me like want to shake, because it's like all your worst fears that can happen in this room is happening. Things are grabbing him, touching him, slithering up his leg. And it's like totally my worst nightmare of being locked in a room and not being able to see what's around me. And
it's crazy. It's a great scene. I know exactly what scene it is. It's crazy.
So it is taking a part of me and putting my fear on paper, and putting myself like, what is this, the worst thing this villain can do to me, outside of like actually like, killing me torture wise, what is the worst thing they can do, and put it on paper. And I think a little bit of my fears, because I have a lot of them, go into each of my stories.
Do you find that therapeutic a little bit, or do you find
a little bit? It breaks the, okay, well, you just wrote it, nothing bad happened to them. But just, like mental health awareness, if you have like, paranoia or whatever, it can be triggering as well, so kind of have to be careful what you put in, if it's going to trigger you or not.
Sure. Nikki, you want to chime in?
Well, I've written books about Christian nationalism and gun violence, because these are subjects that happen in the real world and scare the hell out of me and feel helpless to do anything about. So the books are just a way of trying to deal with the fear and trying to make sense of it. So yeah, those are the bad guys, and they don't get vanquished, not in my books and not in real life, but at least the characters grapple with the problem.
Do you find there's a therapy behind that as well?
I do, and it does help me kind of understand the subject a little better.
Nice. Charles, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I guess some of those, like Tiffany says, there's a lot or a little in each one of the characters. Where this one is bulletproof. This one's Teflon. Nothing sticks to him. That kind of an attitude. The things that are probably the most terrifying for somebody like me is that the things that I can't control, I can't intercept, where the bad guy has captured an important person of my life, and I'm being extorted, and I don't have the leverage that I want. And I'm sorry, Mickey. I show up with weapons to be able to make sure that nothing gets passed alive, because that's just who I am. I'm from that same school that Tim is, which is I'm there to defend and protect, and for those people that I have taken that obligation, and if they're out of my reach, they're beyond me being able to take care of. that for me is terrifying. And so that's where those challenges within some of the books where, you know, she put herself out of his reach because she felt that she was no longer worthy of him. And that's and that's crushing for him. And so it's it's those are enormous burdens, psychological, self-inflicted. Okay, yeah, all right, fine, guilty as charged. But those are the kind of things that we like to exploit. Rox, you want to weigh in?
No, I think you kind of summed it up. It is, some of it can feel very personal. Some of it can be like a catharsis where getting it out there does make you feel a little better. And then, as Mickey said, some of it, there's no getting over it. It's just there. It's a reality. Yeah. And so face it, that it is a reality.
I'm curious. I'm curious because I don't know how you guys write. So forgive me for asking this, but I'm curious, when you read something the other person wrote that invokes fear of yours, or you see their fear, is that a different experience for you than playing with it? When you write, because I don't know if you guys edit over each other or if you write on top of what that person writes, how your partnership works. But in terms of that, do you find you're recognizing that a lot more, and you kind of see that? Is that something that you guys play with a little bit between each other?
It's a great question, and we do see it to a degree. We also temper it so that part of the
nice
being a long-term co-author team is that we try and smooth it so you really can't tell whose voice said it. So you'll never know exactly whose fear it was.
That's awesome. I love that. Charles, did you want to add anything to that?
No, we've got our patent pending technique of literary ping pong that we use to be able to bat the story back and forth, to be able to get that polished look where even the editor goes, "Who wrote this?" And it's like, yeah, it's a distraction for the reader to say, "Oh, this one's Charles. Okay, this one's Rox. Okay, yeah. How rude is that?" So we try to avoid that. So yeah, we spend a little extra time, but we think we get a better product when we do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love that you guys are recognizing that within one another's too. That's pretty cool. All right, Tim. I saved you for last for good reason, because I think you have probably some really good introspective on this. So give everybody your introspective.
Yeah, one of the scariest things that I wrote about in my book was my issues with alcohol from 12 years old to 51 years old. And so alcohol was definitely one of the villains. And that was scary to write because it was very personal, but it was probably, in 132 pages in my short book, that's probably one of the most impactful things that I wrote about, that people are responding to me saying, I didn't know that about you, or more importantly, I didn't know that about myself, that they're realizing something, whether it's alcohol is the demon that they're battling or whatever it is. And so that was scary to write. It was easy to write, but it was scary to put out there to the world. And I almost got to the point where I got my first 3 chapters back that were edited. And I thought, this is stupid. This is a dumb thing to do. What am I doing? I am not an author. The world does not need to see this book. And thankfully, I pushed through that. I shut that part of my brain off and released the book. And I'm so thankful I did. But yeah, it was scary. It was, but it was so healing too, to recognize that as I was writing, like, okay, what is 12-year-old Tim Egerbrotten? What was he thinking? Or why did alcohol become such a part of his life? And so that's what I'm hoping for, that people can weave that into their own life.
Nice. Yeah, I don't have to ask you if that was therapeutic. That sounds like that's exactly what all of that was.
Dude, yeah, it was monumental. I mean, it was like peeling back the curtains of my own life, and it was fun and scary and all those feelings mixed up.
All right. Well, speaking of fun, I'm going to have a little fun with y'all. We're going to jump into our epilogue, and it's going to be very, very much about a little fun for all of you. And how this works is basically I'm going to give you 3 characters. I have 3 villains for you all, and you have to try and reform one. So you have to pick one you're going to reform. You have to pick one you're just going to lock up and throw away the key and get rid of. And then the other one you have to take out for a night on the town, whether it's going to dinner, whether it's going to a movie, whatever you want to do with that one villain, you have to choose one to do that with. All right. I'm just going to go down the line. So Tim, you're going to start, and then Rox, and then Tiffany, and then Mickey, then Charles, and then we'll go the snake the other way for the next pairing. If you guys want to write these down, that's fine. If you don't know who they are, that's fine too. We'll figure it out. But I kind of did a very blanketed thing, so I think most of these are going to be recognizable, if not. But the first 3, I want you to pick one to go on a town, one to reform, one to lock up. Is Cruella de Vil, Harley Quinn, and then Beatrix Lestrange, who is the villain in Harry Potter. So you have to choose one of the 3. All right. So whenever you guys are ready, Tim, you can just go whenever you're ready. One on the town, one to reform, one to lock up.
All right. Well, I'd have to go out on the town with Cruella de Vil because she's got that cool car, and it would be really fun to, zip through town. Beatrice, I'd probably try to reform her. And is it Harley? Is that the third one?
Yeah.
I don't know anything about Harley, so let's just lock Harley up.
All right. Sounds fair enough. Rox?
Yeah, I've got a little different slant on that. We're gonna lock up Cruella. I'm sorry, she did the puppy thing. That's horrible. And then Harley, we're gonna go ahead and take Harley out to dinner so that I can understand his perspective a little better. And Beatrice, she'll get the other part. So.
All right, Tiffany.
I think I had the same. Like me, we're gonna do a date night. Me and Harley, we're gonna go out to town, have some fun. Pull up something, lock up Cruella because she hurt puppies, or she wanted to hurt puppies, and reform Beatrix because she was a good person to start with. We could try to reform her, and hopefully she, without the he who should not be named influence, maybe she might be able to recover.
Fair enough. All right, Mickey.
I would reform Cruella. I think she can learn something to care about puppies. Harley, I go out on the town with. I'll be hurting the next day, but it'll be fun. And Beatrice, I just lock her up. I think she's too far gone.
Fair enough. All right, Charles.
I'd probably lock up Cruella. I mean, whacking the puppies and turning them into coats. I don't really have any. There's no place on this planet that I can think of that I want to have her. Harley Quinn. Yeah, we'd probably still be running from the police after a party night with her. So, and Beatrice, I probably have somebody paid to be able to reform her because I'm afraid I might catch whatever she's got. So,
fair enough. All right, so here's the next group. Charles, you're going to start us off. This will be interesting. All right, we have Darth Vader, we have the Joker, and we have Dr. Evil. You have to take one on the town, you have to reform one, and you have to lock them up. So whenever you guys are ready, Charles, you'll start us off.
Okay, you said that was Vader?
Darth Vader, the Joker, and Dr. Evil.
Okay, Dr. Evil. I can see us having fun on a night on the town with Vader. I mean, him choking people and just getting drinks, and we would, our service would be spectacular. So I'd probably go out in town with him. The Joker, he'd have to be locked up, but I'd insist him being on Pluto. Not on this planet. And Dr. Evil, we could try to reform, but we'll save a space on the spaceship to go with the Joker to Pluto.
Sounds good. Mickey?
Well, I think Vader you can reform because he's a good guy who just had made some bad decisions. Joker you lock up because he's hopeless. He's never coming back. But Evil, Doctor Evil, he would be fun. I think you'd have to like keep watching your back, but overall you'd have a great time with him.
Nice. Tiffany?
I would take out Dr. Evil just because I want to sit across from him and be $1 million. It's hard between Joker and Vader because as many times as you lock up Joker, he's going to get out and cause havoc. And Harley Quinn tried to reform Joker and didn't work. So we'll lock up Joker and try to reform Vader.
Sounds good. All right, Rox?
Boy, this is definitely a tough one. But I really think I want to go out to dinner with Dr. Evil just so that, I can see a different side of dining out. Darth Vader, I think Darth Vader is potentially reformable. Like Mickey said, I think that has a perspective to do that. Joker, no. Lock him up.
Tim?
I echo that. I would love to see Dr. Evil's laser, and that would be fun to shoot off some laser on that tongue with him. And Darth definitely has some good left in him. And the Joker, lock him up, throw away the key.
All right. Well, that was some fun, everybody. Thank you for indulging me. Good way to cleanse our palates from all this bad guy talk. And so let's go around the room and tell everybody where they can find your wonderful, wonderful works. Tim, we're going to start with you. So tell everybody where they can find you, sir.
My website's easiest, offdutychief.com, offdutychief.com. My music's out there. I'm an entertainer and musician also, and my speaking stuff is out there, and then also my book is available there too, offdutychief.com.
I added some of Tim's music to my playlist rotation. It's pretty good, everybody. Check it out. All right, Rox. I know you and Charles are going to have the same thing, but if you guys want, like half of you take half of one place and the other, I don't know.
Yes, I know it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
So enigmaseries.com is where you can get samples of all of our stories and download some fun stuff.
Well, Charles, you get to say it twice, so go ahead.
Okay. Well, actually, I'll add a little extra spin onto it. That's also the enigmaseries.com is where you can get the audible samples. We have all of our books in audio format. The reason I mention that is because since we're listening to this podcast, a lot of people just like to listen to stuff, and so we made the conscious effort to be able to put all of our properties into audible format, and I use our voice actor, Mr. Derek Scholes, to be able to make sure that you don't have to listen to my voice over and over again, because he's far better at the narrative than I am.
Nice. All right, Mickey?
You can find information about me on mickeydubrow.com, and you can find my books on most places, even Walmart, but I would suggest you go with bookshop.org and support indie bookstores.
Nice. For those who didn't hear, because I think this is super important, it's mickeydubrow.com, and he encourages you to go to bookshop.org to get indie books. So, Tiffany?
You can find all my books at tiffanyvega.com. You can find them on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. I'm also a creator, and I own my own shop called moodalchemycrafts.com. And you can get things like in the background here, car coasters, cups, t-shirts, and all kinds of stuff at moodalchemy.com. And that's it.
Awesome. And I'm Joe Compton. This is Go Indie Now. Congratulations, you found us. This is your first time here. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. If it's your 15th or 5,000th time here, hey, great. You know what you can do? You can click that like button. You can share our stream. You can comment, do all the wonderful things you do to help us get seen. We really appreciate it. All these artists really appreciate it. All of their links are in our description as well. So all the links they just told you about are there. You can click on them and go check out what they're doing. We really encourage that. Please do. And all of the Indie Connection books as well. Thank you so much for joining us. It's another wonderful chat, and I really appreciate it because, as you know, it's always time to go indie now. We'll see you guys again soon. Bye, everybody.